Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us some really fascinating material today.
Absolutely. It's quite a unique take.
Right. Our mission, as always, is to really unpack the core ideas for you, get straight to the insights.
And today we're looking at something pretty different. It's your copy of Patanjali Autogene Therapy, the editing version from July 2021.
Yeah, by Acharya Birju Maharaj. And it's got this subtitle, A Complete Manual of Autogene Therapy, part of a series called Yognosis, the Metaphor of Metamorphosis.
And there's a dedication, too, to his Guruji and lineage, which is, typical but always nice to see.
So this isn't your standard commentary on the Yoga Sutras.
Not at all. This book basically argues that Patanjali's work isn't just philosophy. It's presented as a form of science, almost technology.
Okay. And our goal here in this deep dive is to explore that specific interpretation, right? The author's view through this scientific lens looking at genetics and epigenetics specifically.
Exactly. It's a novel approach, definitely thought-provoking. We're aiming to just lay out what the author is proposing.
And we should mention up front, the book itself has a disclaimer. It stresses this is theoretical.
Yeah, very important. It's not medical advice. Always consult healthcare professionals for health matters.
Absolutely essential. But with that noted, let's get into it. What is the core argument he's making here?
Well, he says Patanjali's yoga darshan is more than just thought. It's, and I'm quoting loosely here, scientific technological wisdom.
Okay.
He sees it as an inherent technology of life, describing the true perception of yoga as this eternal and transformational technology of genetic life science.
Wow. Okay, so a direct link between ancient insight and modern genetic science. That's bold.
It is. He's suggesting the sutras contain fundamental biological truths that we're only now, perhaps, understanding through genetics.
So how does he bridge that? What's the framework? Does he use analogies or?
Yes, analogies are key. One really central one is life itself being like a program.
A program?
Yeah, running on this supercomputer called universe.
Yeah.
And within that, yoga is presented as the operating system.
An operating system. Like Windows or Mac OS, but for life?
Sort of, yeah. But an OS that he suggests can, create, run, reset, even reprogram the life program itself.
Reprogram? At what level?
Right down to the cellular level. That's another crucial point.
Okay, tell me more about that, the cellular level.
He emphasizes, and this is a direct quote, cells executes our life. The idea is we often just focus on the big picture, our body as a whole.
Right, the macroscopic view.
Exactly. But he argues we should see life as a communion of these basic units, the cells. He even uses the term purush bahutva, meaning like a multitude of consciousnesses, the cells themselves forming a collective.
So we're not just one me, but a society of cells. That does shift your perspective.
It really does. And this is where the genetics and epigenetics come in strongly.
Okay, so how do they fit into this operating system idea for the cells?
He draws a parallel. The genome, our basic DNA sequence, he likens it to Ejrata and calls it the read-only memory. Like the core unchangeable program code.
Just factory setting.
Pretty much, yeah. But then there's the epigenome. He compares that to chit, the mind stuff, and describes it as random access memory, or RAM.
Okay, so RAM is like the active workspace, the bit that changes.
Precisely. It's the executional form, how the genome is actually expressed, and that, the epigenome, is what gets influenced by everything, our actions, environment, thoughts. And crucially, he says, yoga's main job is to regulate this layer, the epigenome.
Got it. So genes are the blueprint, the epigenome is how the blueprint is used day to day, and yoga is the tool to manage that usage, to keep things running smoothly.
That's a good way to put it.
But why does it need managing? What's the sort of the glitch in the system that yoga is meant to fix?
Well, the author talks about how life, this cell purush, gets caught up, trapped, essentially.
Trapped by what?
By momentary pleasures offered by prakriti, which he frames as cellular matter or the material world at that level. This leads to a vicious cycle of cause and effect. Basically, suffering.
So like getting addicted to junk data at the cellular level.
Kind of, yeah. And the root cause he identifies is avidya, which is often translated as ignorance, but here it's framed more like a lack of identification with our true cellular nature. It's linked to impurities that distort perception.
Okay, so this avidya is like a fundamental bug in the program, causing misperceptions and leading us down these suffering loops.
Right, and that's where the autogene therapy part comes in. Yoga is presented as the way out of this cycle.
Through reprogramming.
Exactly. He calls it yogic reprogramming, or pratiprasav, which he translates quite literally as epigenetic reversal.
Epigenetic reversal. Wow. So undoing those negative patterns written onto the epigenome.
That seems to be the idea. He says the conscious application of yoga, specifically mentioning Kriya Yoga and Ashtanga Yoga, acts as the master key, the key to reset, to reprogram the program of life.
Okay, let's break that down. How does Ashtanga Yoga, the 8 limbs, actually do this epigenetic reprogramming, according to him?
He maps the limbs onto potential cellular or genetic effects. It's quite fascinating.
Like what? Give me an example.
Okay, so Asan, the physical postures. He suggests they aim for parity with infinite consciousness. At the cellular level, sort of establishing balance.
Cellular balance through posture. Right.
Pranayam, breath control, is seen as regulating cellular energy, the bioenergetics. Pratyahar, sense withdrawal, he interprets as inducing self-autophagy.
Autophagy, like the cell's cleaning process.
Exactly. Cellular housekeeping, triggered by withdrawing external sensory input, perhaps. Then dharana, concentration, is about confining or focusing the epigenetic program. Dhyan, meditation, helps integrate the whole genetic machinery.
And it all culminates in samadhi.
Yes, samadhi, the state of meditative absorption, he equates with genetic symmetry, which ultimately leads to kaivalya.
Genetic symmetry, that links a very deep meditative state directly to our genes. And kaivalya, usually translated as liberation or isolation. What's the genetic take here?
He describes kaivalya not necessarily as a final permanent endpoint, but as a reversible state of the cell, like cellular quiescence.
Resistance.
Meaning like a stem cell that goes dormant. It's inactive, but holds the potential to re-enter the active cycle. He suggests this state can reach through yoga, but also potentially through birth, certain herbs, mantra, and even induced autophagy, which he connects to tapa, or discipline.
So kaivalya as a kind of cellular pause button, a deep reset state.
It is. It frames it as a biological potential, not just a purely spiritual one.
Okay. Now what about karma? Actions and consequences. How does that fit into this genetic model?
He uses the term karmashya and defines it basically as epigenetic memory.
Epigenetic memory. So our actions leave marks on our epigenome.
That's the argument. These actions, or karma, create lasting epigenetic imprints, which he calls sanskaras. These imprints then influence future cellular behavior, maybe even across generations, though he focuses on the individual's life.
So our past literally gets written into our active genetic expression.
That's the idea. But interestingly, he suggests that for yogi, someone whose operating system is functioning well, karma doesn't necessarily create negative or positive epigenetic changes in the same way. It's more about maintaining balance, perhaps not being subject to those binding imprints.
Okay. And he mentioned kleshas, the afflictions or obstacles. How do they factor into this epigenetic view?
Right. The 5 kleshas. Avidya, asmita, ego, raga, attachment, dvesha, aversion, and abhinivesha, clinging to life. He presents these as fundamental blocks to proper epigenetic regulation.
So they're like conflicts in the cellular programming.
You could say that. Yeah. Errors that disrupt the flow. And the root of all of them, he says, goes back to avidya, that misidentification we talked about earlier. But the good news, according to the text, is that they can be reversed. Patiprasava heya, he quotes, meaning they are resolvable through yoga.
And the method for resolving them is, again, the 8 limbs, Ashtanga Yoga.
Yes. He explicitly links the practice of the 8 limbs yoga agduanhanat to the annihilation of impurities and gaining insightful perception. It's the practical toolkit for this autogene therapy.
Does he emphasize any particular limbs within that framework?
He mentions yama, the universal ethics, and niyama, the personal observances, as foundational. Within niyama, he highlights things like purity, contentment, tapas, discipline linked to autophagy, svajaya, self-study, which he connects to aligning with the genome, and israra pranatana, devotion, linked to engaging the genome's potential.
He seems to really map everything onto this.
To autophagy, svajaya, self-study, which he connects to aligning with the genome, and israra pranatana, devotion, linked to engaging the genome's potential.
He seems to really map everything onto this genetic framework, even devotion.
He does. It's a consistent theme throughout.
And he circled back to samadhi, describing it as genetic symmetry. You mentioned different levels.
Yes, he talks about samadhi with seed, sabija, and without seed, nirbija. The seed here might refer to the underlying genetic information or potential for modification. He also uses terms like million genetic parity and informational genetic parity.
Those sound complex.
They are. They seem to point towards very subtle states of coherence and balance within the cellular genetic network achieved through deep meditation.
Okay. And what about Sayama, the combination of dharana, dhyana, and samadhi?
He defines that combination, Trayam Ekatra Sayama, as creating a kind of programming platform. He uses the term prajaloka, the light of wisdom, suggesting that this combined practice gives one direct access to influence the epigenetic program.
Like gaining admin rights to your own cellular OS.
That's a very good analogy for it, yes.
And one last point he seemed to emphasize was pratyahara, sense withdrawal, linking it to sensory control and the epigene. Why the specific focus there?
He describes pratyahara as unemploying receptors. By consciously managing sensory input, you reduce the constant external data flow that can, randomly influence or disrupt your epigenetic state. It's seen as crucial for focused epigenetic reform, controlling the input to better manage the output.
Wow, okay. This has been quite the journey. Connecting Patanjali's ancient framework to, well, the nuts and bolts of modern biology. It's definitely a unique perspective.
It really is. So the key takeaway, I'd say, is this radical reimagining of the Yoga Sutras. Not just as philosophy or psychology, but as a practical, almost technical manual for what the author calls autogene therapy.
A method for consciously influencing our own genetic expression through these ancient yogic practices.
That's the core proposal. Influencing our well-being right down to the cellular and genetic level.
It's definitely complex and, as we said, theoretical. It merges ancient insight with modern science in a way that's bound to be, well, discussed.
For sure. And those central metaphors, life as a program, yoga as the OS, the potential for metamorphosis via epigenetic change, they certainly give you a new lens to look through.
They really do. So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to think about. And it's a big if presented in this source, but if these ancient practices could offer a scientifically understandable way to influence our genetic destiny, our health, our very being, what other questions does that open up for you? What does it suggest about the mind-body link and maybe even the limits or lack thereof of our own potential?
Lot to ponder there.
Definitely. Thanks for exploring this with us on The Deep Dive.